Economics is about people, their interactions, their expectations about the future, their work and standard of living, and the various trade-offs they face. Economics is also about markets and institutions such as banks, government agencies, and about the rules of the game set by policymakers. Hello, my name is Leiderman, and I'm a professor at the Bergla School of Economics and the Kohler School of Management at Tel Aviv University. We start by noting that economists define the developments of mid-2020 as the COVID-19 crisis. I would also call this episode the sudden stop crisis. What exactly do we mean by crisis? Economic crises are major events that pose critical risks to an economy, such as high unemployment and a deep recession, financial and banking collapses, banking sector bankruptcies, market and political instability and high uncertainty, a generalized loss of confidence about policymakers, a major fall in the standard of living of most of the population. As it happens, I have done extensive work on various aspects of economic crisis, and I share some of the conclusions with my students in my courses. Yet for me, the 2020 coronavirus is a challenging and unique crisis. This is so because it is completely different from previous crises. Why? Because it started with the immediate lockdown and freeze of economic activity as a result of implementation of containment measures such as quarantines, travel bans, and the closure of public places. In most previous crises, such as the well-known Great Depression of 1929, it took a few years until one could see a major rise in unemployment and a drop in economic activity, or what we call recession. As you can imagine, for individuals, businesses, and policymakers, there was considerable time to prepare for the critical times ahead. But in the case of a surprise pandemic, such as COVID-19, that requires the adoption of immediate containment measures, and there is a strong negative impact on economic activity already at the start of the event. Consequently, the entire world entered into recession by the end of the first quarter of 2020. What are the main channels for the transmission of a pandemic, such as COVID-19, to the economy? We will focus here on three such channels. First, the supply of goods and services. Second, the demand for goods and services. And third, the economic policy steps taken by the authorities to manage the crisis. The supply side of any economy consists mainly of the factories, companies, and enterprises that produce a flow of goods and services over a given period. It also includes the resources used in the process of production, such as the stock of machines and equipment, the labor force, and the available technologies. The pandemic has resulted in a major reduction in the level of production, that is, a recession. For example, most retailers, restaurants, and cinemas have been closed. Within service sectors, activities involving travel, tourism, and direct contact between consumers and service providers, such as hairdressers or house purchases, have been clearly adversely affected by restrictions on movement and social distancing. In addition, there have been severe disruptions to the global supply chain. To illustrate this, the almost complete shutdown of the Chinese economy in February 2020 resulted in a shortage of essential inputs and components for the production of cars in Europe and the United States. On the demand side, People have been required to stay at home, resulting in a lower demand for consumption of goods and services, and investors have postponed or canceled their plans to build new factories or infrastructures. The rise in uncertainty has resulted in a loss of confidence and even anxiety about the future. Under these conditions, the demand for spending has declined, contributing its part to the recession. Last but not least, economic performance under a pandemic depends on the measures undertaken by policymakers with the aim of smoothing out as much as possible the depth of the recession and creating conditions for a quick recovery once the pandemic risks are significantly reduced. Granting financial aid, lowering taxes, and expanding the liquidity of available loans fall in this category. In summary, we have discussed the economic outcomes of epidemics, namely recession, and we mentioned supply and demand effects. We also addressed some of the steps policymakers may take in order to minimize these effects. Let me conclude by noting that experience suggests that quite often crises create new opportunities in business and other areas. I believe this is also the case for the COVID-19 crisis.